Hello, everyone. And welcome to this new ITM Platform training session. My name is Rene Alvarez, and I'm going to be your host for this training session. Remember that these training sessions can grant you the ITM Platform certification if you accumulate 10 hours of training. This session will have a duration of approximately 45 minutes, after which we will have some minutes to cover the questions you may have. Please enter your questions in the chat or through the Q&A area. This is mainly a user training session for full access users that will configure the project lifecycle characteristics in ITM Platform, and also for project managers that will use them. Well, project managers and approvers or executives, if you consider those roles in your system as well. Our topics for today are these. First, we will cover some thoughts, some concepts around project management and life cycles. And then we will dive into ITM Platform specific areas, project states. I'm going to show you the sequences, authorizations, and history of changes. And as usual, we finalize the session remembering how to ask for help if you need some help with anything inside ITM Platform. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the concepts for today. The first concepts that I would like to cover are these: the project management and lifecycle. So what is a project lifecycle? The first thing that I would like to highlight is this: project lifecycle does not refer to the project being waterfall or agile. Okay, these are two different things. One is the approach that you intend to use to manage your project, and another component would be the life cycle. This life cycle will reflect, or should reflect, as much as possible organizational needs. In other words, when you think about projects in your organization, in your company, in your business, how do you tend to think about projects, especially when you think about the creation of a project, the identification of a project, anything that needs to happen for the project to become alive, to become a real project, how you reach the outcomes, how you get to the benefits, and how you close, how you finalize that work. Okay. Everything that happens in between ideation or identification of that need and the project closure, that is what we call a project life cycle. And again, it is very important to feed your organizational needs. Not every organization will have the same approach in terms of life cycle, even if we tend to use the same project management approach, the same project management methodology, like let's do it in waterfall or let's do it in agile. Every organization will have small variations or very big variations. So it is very important that you identify these needs so they can be correctly mapped to the life cycle. The next concept that I want to emphasize is this. Even if you have many different project types, even if you have a variety of project types, or different project departments, or specific needs for different areas in your organization, every project should have a common starting point. Usually that can be identified as ideation, or we commonly refer to this process as ideation, or how you identify a project needs to happen. That is your starting point. And again, it really doesn't matter if you intend to do waterfall or agile, or you follow one process or another one. They all share a common starting point. For ITM Platform, this is also key, that you can identify that starting point. Maybe it's as simple as just define the name and that's it. or maybe provide with a name or and a description. But you always have a common starting point, after which we can make a lot of different decisions in the road. For example, maybe you start the same way for a strategic project and an ongoing project, but after a little while you realize that these two will have a different behavior, so they need to follow different steps. Okay, so please remember all this. The project lifecycle is not waterfall or agile. The project lifecycle reflects your organizational needs in terms of how we identify the projects and how we get to the results and how we close them, and all have a common starting point. Okay? So how does ITM Platform understand project lifecycle? It will do it through project states. Okay? When we face the task of creating or defining our project life cycles inside ITM Platform, we need to think about project states. All right? What is a state? What is a project state? It is an individual step in the life cycle. Here, it would be good if you can first of all identify how many different project types you think you will need, right? And if every project type will follow the same life cycle or they have variances. Okay, each step in that process would need to be defined as a project state inside ITM Platform. Okay. But since we are defining them inside ITM Platform, they will provide with consistency across different projects. So you know that every time the project needs to adopt certain state, every project should behave the same way for that step, or maybe for that step only. Okay, and it can be different for other steps. But you need to tell ITM Platform what happens when we need a project to get into that state. All right. What does that state will do for us? They will provide certain granularity in terms of, for example, if you want to identify that state as a state that allows actual progress, maybe not everything should be understood as a progress step. Okay, I'm gonna emphasize that in a few minutes, but ITM Platform will allow you to define if that state will allow you to report on actual progress, like actual time. Okay. It will also define what are the possible next steps. Maybe you cannot jump from any step to any other step or state. So you can define if you are in step 2, for example, you're allowed to go to step 3, but you are not allowed to go to step 5. Okay, so you need to define all those settings inside ITM Platform, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Another thing that the state can do for us is that they will condition whether the project is visible at a portfolio level. For example, maybe not everything should be visible at a at the portfolio level. For example, maybe I'm not interested in the first time that we'd identify an idea, right? Maybe I'm just interested in projects that are in planning or after, or something like that. Okay, so you can define in ITM Platform if the step is subject to display the project at the portfolio level. And more important than the previous points, for certain organizations, they will allow you to create authorization rules. What are those authorization rules? If you need someone to say yes or no to go to a certain state, that is an authorization, and that can happen in a very controlled way inside ITM Platform. Inside the definition of the state, you can create those rules. And again, I'm going to show you in a few minutes. The most common sequence that we see in project management is this, right? This is really common. Initiate, plan, execute, and close. By the way, I did not define this before, but it tends to be curious that we refer to these structures as to life cycle. Where is the cycle? A cycle means that we start up, that we start over, right? Once we reach the completion stage, we can go to the first step again. Okay. Yes and no, right? The reason behind that name is because in project management, when you finalize a project, they usually will trigger a new project. Whenever you complete a project, usually a new need is identified so you can start over, but not within the same project, with the next project. That's why it is called a life cycle, okay? A cycle. From the perspective of a single plan, from a single project, it is really not a cycle. It is a straight line, let's say. Okay, you can have branching, you can support branching, but in terms of from the perspective of a project, it's just a straight line, right? And again, this is the most common one. First, you have the initiate step or state. Okay, this is where you identify the project that you want to execute, and you define it. Okay, then the second step would be creating the plan, the full details of the plan. Maybe it's a Kanban board, maybe it's a Gantt view, maybe it's a very long list of tasks, the resources that you'll require, the purchases, the income, the risks, issues, all everything that goes inside a project plan. Then you execute it. You start doing the tasks, right, to achieve the outcome that you need. And last, when everything is done, then you go through a closure process. You need to, for example, make sure that all your agreements, your contracts are closed, are properly paid. Invoicing is also happening or closed, right? And then you can say the project has been completed. This is the usual base. This example can have a lot of different variations, but we usually can identify them as part of these very high level steps. Okay? All right. Let's take then a closer look on what we can define inside a project state. Okay? We can define authorizations. We can for authorizations, we will need to define rules that are applied to the state when you try to enter, right? Well, not you, the project, correct? When you say that, for example, the execution state will have an authorization, means that if I want to move a project from planning to execution, when I'm trying to enter the execution state, that's when the authorization needs to happen. Okay, not before. All right. So you can define one or more rules if needed to actually enter that state, to make it the current state. All right. And inside these rules, there are certain things that you can do. For example, you can define conditions. If the rule is applied always, or if it's conditional by the value, for example, of the start date, the end date, the manager value, the top-down budget value, or maybe the department who is in charge of executing that project. Okay. We can also define the models. The models mean that I can ask for no authorization, that would be none. Okay, I can apply a rule that does not involve an authorization, it automatically is approved, right? Or I'm gonna need the approval from at least a given number of authorizers or all authorizers. And the last component is the authorizers list actually. Okay. All right, so let me show you this in action. Let's go here into our demo environment. Okay, again, this is for full access, so I'm going to access ITM Platform as a full access user. And let's go first to where you can define those states. Let's go to the configuration area, expand parameters, and under project parameters, you will find the tab corresponding to project statuses. This is the status, okay? All right. The first thing that we notice in here is whether we would like to use authorizations or no. Okay. If you just want to have a project lifecycle, but you really don't require authorizations because they will happen outside ITM Platform, or simply because you really don't require them, you can safely disable this check mark. This simply means that the rules, even if you configure them, they will be ignored. Okay. Next, we need to define the list of different statuses. Remember, these are the statuses for all different types of projects, okay? So if I have, I don't know, 5 different project types, and each of those 5 project types will have a different life cycle, it means that they will need to refer to different stages, right? To different statuses. You need to create them all in here, okay? For the status, the basic elements that you need to define is, of course, the status name, the description. Okay, you can optionally enter a description. You can define an icon, so it's easier for you to identify that particular status by the icon. But remember that we said we need a single entry point. We need to identify a common starting point, right? You need to set one of those as the default. This is really important because every project will need to start in the same place, right? If later they differ in the life cycle, that is a decision made through the workflow, not from the beginning. They always need to have a common starting point. Okay. And if you for some reason you would like to delete a previously created status, it should not be in use, of course. If it's in use, ITM Platform will not let you delete it, but you can delete it with this delete button. Okay. All right. Below this list, we will see this little chart that will reflect exactly how we connect them, okay? For example, by following the arrows, you can see that if I have a project that is in the initial state, I can move it to canceled. But one thing that I cannot do is moving it from canceled to another state, right? Not directly, because all arrows are pointing to canceled, but not from canceled, right? So we need to be careful. We need to be careful, and we need to anticipate all these situations. How can you build something like this so it's actually usable in your system? Let's take a closer look to any of those statuses. For example, let's go to the initial state. Okay, if we click on that, we will see the following. First, again, it is the name, the status name. Initial in this case, you can change it if you want. Then there is an optional description. This description will be visible to any user who needs to use that status. So maybe it's a very good idea to enter those descriptions. So we explain what this state means. Then we can select a status icon that might help us identify visually that particular state. Okay, we can select one of those, click and select OK. All right. Then we need to identify what are the possible next steps, the destination statuses. And as you can see, you have different options. For example, you can select them all. From this state, I could move to any, right? Or maybe some are the permitted ones. In this case, looks like from the initial, I cannot move the project to close. Maybe it makes sense, right? If I'm still defining the project, it makes no sense if I can move it to the close state. I would need to go first through the planning and execution processes before engaging in the closure steps. Okay, so you can make those decisions here. As we said before, we have a collection of other options. For example, enable time reporting. This means that if the project enters this state, if we are going to allow our team members to enter time, so you need to ask this question. You need to ask yourself or your team or your organization this question. When the project is in the initial, because we are still defining it, does it make sense that someone can enter actual time for that project? Okay. Usually the answer for this step is no, right? So you disable this option. But if you require to capture actual time for this step, then by all means, make it so, right? Just enable this option. Okay. Uh, Connected to this concept, you can optionally display the tasks in the timesheet, right? So maybe you allow the time reporting, but you are not allowing the timesheet itself. Therefore, it's only available to the project manager. Displaying portfolio, one more time. Do you want these projects to be visible at the portfolio level? Maybe yes, maybe no, right? Um, I'm going to say if you have a tactic PMO, tactic PMO is a PMO that focuses on applying policies that will drive project into success, but from identified projects or approved projects, usually it is not that important to identify these previous steps. Anything happening before planning usually is not that relevant. Okay. So if your PMO, if your organization focuses more on executing the projects that you have identified and making sure excuse me. If your organization has a tactic PMO and therefore your organization is trying to focus the efforts into executing the projects that they have identified, and the main concern is that the projects will fall under time, under budget, right? Usually, it is not that important to see steps prior to the planning phase. However, if you have a strategic PMO, right? In other words, your organization requires a lot of visibility related into making the right decision, approving the right projects. Probably every step should be visible in the portfolio because this is the way in which key decision makers can make sure that we create the projects that we need. Therefore, they can make the right decisions. Okay. There is another option here, allow subscriptions. In ITM Platform, we are changing a lot of things around AI and the use of AI tools. One of our tools is subscriptions to AI reports. Okay, so if you would like those reports to be enabled at this step, you can again turn it on or maybe turn it off because the project will not contain enough information, so it makes no sense really to analyze it from the AI perspective, and we just want to gain visibility on those. Okay. All right, now let's speak about the lower portion of the screen. After the definition of the status itself, we have the authorization area, right? And as you can see here, we have a table. Any step can contain one or more rules, right? It is not limited to just one. From here, we can define as many rules as required. How can we define a rule? Okay, let me try to highlight it. And I'm not going to save it because this is a demo environment, so it is important to keep it clear. But let me show you how that happens from the screen. Let's say that, probably this is not a very good example. Let me say that the draft step, okay? The draft step is going to be the default step. So every time that we create a new project, it will start from draft. Then what happens after draft? Let's review so it makes sense. Here we are saying after draft, we can cancel the project or the idea. Yeah, maybe it makes sense. I cannot close it because we have not even executed it. We should go through planning and execution. So closed is disabled. But maybe we are saying that we could go through in progress. So maybe this is not a very good idea. It should be defined at first. So I'm going to disable in progress, right? And we can also decide whether this could go back to or to go to the initial step. Maybe the initial makes no sense because it's kind of like repetitive through draft. So I'm going to disable it. So the two things that I'm allowing in here is cancel and on hold. But then what happens to planning? Okay, so let's review that. Here, I'm defining that the projects will start on draft, but after draft, there is no planning step here. Okay. Remember, maybe I'm defining different workflows, different life cycles for different project types. So I need to consider all possibilities. So looks like I'm going to need a planning step. So let me show you how that is created so I can show you how the authorization will happen. I'm going to click on add new status and I'm going to create a planning step. Okay. Then let's select Nikon. For example, maybe this one. Okay. All right. What are the next statuses after planning? Once the planning is done in our project, what could go next? Well, probably in progress, because it looks like in progress means execution, right? That will be another word. And from the planning, maybe we can put it on hold. Then maybe it makes sense, right? But maybe it does not make sense to cancel it. If we are on the planning, instead of canceling, maybe I want to allow to go back. So maybe from planning, I can also go back to draft. That is another possibility, right? So first, let's save and let's verify what is happening below, right? Here, ITM Platform will recalculate this chart, sorry. And as you can see, if I'm on the draft step, I can go sorry, let me review this. Am I doing it right? Oh, no, sorry, my bad. Yes, I created the planning and I can go back to draft, I can go to in progress, and I can go to on hold. But I still need to define that from draft, I can move to planning, right? So let's do that before the authorization rules. So let's modify the draft one more time. And now I can choose planning as a possible destination status. Yeah, now it makes sense. From draft to planning, I have the double arrow, so it means that I can go in between. But whenever I need to enter the planning state, I'm going to need an authorization. Okay, so let's create it. Let's go here. How can I create this authorization rule? If all the time, every time that a project needs to go to planning, needs to have the authorization, okay, I'm going to leave conditions in none. So it means there are no conditions. The rule is always applied, okay? But then I need to define what is the model. I'm going to need to define the authorizers and then the model. I think it makes more sense this way. Instead of choosing first the model, choose the authorizers. Who gets to authorize the project when entering planning? And as you can see, I have the list of all users in my environment. I'm going to say that this user will need to authorize. If there is more than one, you can perfectly select more than one. For example, I'm going to choose here. I'm going to choose this user and this user, right? So these three are authorizers for this planning step. But then it makes sense to think about the model. Should all provide authorization? Only one? Maybe two out of three, right? So you can choose all those options here. If I select at least one, I don't need to enter anything extra, right? At least one. The three will receive the authorization request, and the first one that responds yes or nay, that will approve or reject the project. Okay. If I select at least n, then I need to enter the number. It usually makes sense when you are selecting at least n that you have an odd number, right? So you can you can find the majority, right? For example, in this case, I could choose two. 2 out of 3 would need to approve, okay? Or I can say all. All should approve before the project goes in, all right? So this is one possibility, but maybe you can create extra rules, right? For example, this is true. Let's keep it simple. For example, at least one from this authorizers list, but only in certain conditions or only in certain cases. This is where you can define conditions. For example, yes, we will need to have an authorizer, but only for example, if our budget, our top-down budget is greater than $50,000, okay? So I can go in here and select top-down budget, and I'm going to say it's greater than $50,000. By the way, this currency selection is enforced. This is the system currency. In this case, I cannot change it, even if you know that ITM Platform is multi-currency, it's a multi-currency system. In this case, when you're defining workflows, the currency is always displayed in the base currency, okay? And I can add extra filters, right? Extra conditions that need to be true, all right? What happens then? Well, the recommendation is to have another rule, right? An opposite rule. For example, I can add a new rule and then say that if the top-down budget is less than 50,000, okay, then it will not require authorization, right? This will give you consistency. Sorry, let me check here. No, sorry, my bad. If the project does not require authorization, right? So the condition is not met, then the project will immediately adopt the project status. All right. So let's see this in action. Okay, let's save. And I'm going to show you how this goes. Let's go now to projects. And I'm going to create a new project. Let's create a waterfall project. And let's call this workflow test. All right. I need to select the project type. And I'm going to click on save. The first thing I want to highlight is this. Immediately, the project status is set to draft. Why? Because this was the default, right? Remember, we just defined that. Now, let's say that I would like to move my project to another status. Let's go here, right? And from this button, I'm going to have an area where I can change the status. From the drop-down, I'm going to be able to see the possible next steps. I have on hold, cancel, or planning, right? This is our new step. If I select on hold, take a look at this. I would need to have the authorization to do that. If I click on cancel, looks like I can freely cancel this plan without the authorization, okay? If I go to planning, right? Then I'm going to need to have the authorization. I'm not really sure. It should enable the process. Let's take a closer look in a second, right? All right. Let me cancel this to make sure that it is doing the correct thing. Let's go ahead and save one more time just in case, and I'm going to refresh. Let's verify what I just said because this should be created in the parameters. Let's review. Right, so here we have the planning, right? The next steps can be draft, in progress, or on hold, right? And when we enter planning, yeah, here's where we set our authorization steps. So let's prove it. Let's test it. Let me go back. Let's open that workflow test. All right, and again, I'm going to change it to planning, right? Well, in this case, since I am the project manager and the authorizer, right, it will immediately authorize it. But let me show you how it happens. I'm going to click on Save. Okay, let's give it a second. All right, let's refresh. Maybe the demo environment is a little bit slow. Let's check it out one more time. Okay, so as you can see, it entered the planning state. Okay. Yet again, this happened because I'm both the requester and the authorizer. So it really doesn't ask me. Okay. Now, let me show you that if I go here, let's go into our demo environment, but this time as a project manager. Okay, let me see if I can. Let's All right. Okay, I forgot that the project manager cannot create new projects. This environment is for the PMO really. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new one. Let's create a new project. Again, it's gonna be a waterfall. Workflow test 2. Okay, take a look at this. It's gonna be draft, right? Oh, sorry. Yes, I need to provide with a project type. Let's select it. But then before changing the project status, I'm gonna assign that user as project manager. Okay, so this project manager, yeah, this is one. I'm gonna set this user as a project manager. All right, let's take a look. If I return to the environment as a project manager, I have this project, right? So far so good. It is in draft, right? And now the project manager wants to move from draft into planning. Okay, looks like I made a mistake because it's telling me that this will not happen. Okay, no worries. I'm going to show it with the on hold because this one will definitely require an approval. Okay. Oh, sorry, I just forgot. Remember, we created a rule. We created a condition. It is being entering the planning state because the criteria is not met. Therefore, there is no need for authorization to happen. But what happens now if I go to the budget? Remember, it was a top-down budget. From here, if I edit the top-down budget and then I say that this budget is $60,000, okay? Now we have our total top-down budget. It goes beyond the 50,000 threshold that we defined. Let's test it. If we go here one more time and we go to the planning step, see this? Now it's saying, well, you have a list of authorizers. It can be any of those, right? Let's enter an optional comment. Can you please review these projects and authorize the planning phase. Okay. All right. Let me show you what happens from the project management perspective. The project status is still draft, but now it's saying that the planning is pending, right? This new status is pending. And here it tells me that the authorization request has just started. Now let's take a closer look from the other side, from the authorizer's perspective. Let's go here. Let's go back to the demo environment. Okay. What I should do as an authorizer, okay, is go to my desktop and go to my authorizations. Of course, an email is going to be issued to me, so I know that I need to take action, okay? But this will direct me to my authorizations, and from here, I should see that project, okay, that project request. As you can see, the current status is draft. The requested status is planning, right? How can I approve or reject? If I go here, if I click on the name of the project, it will display that. It will give me the details. The requested status is planning. This is the requester, and this is the comment. Then, optionally, I can add certain comments. Okay? So you can enter these additional comments, and then you can click on authorize. What happens if you reject it? Well, it will simply go back into the previous step, into the original, the current status. It will not acquire the new status. But if I click on authorize, okay, now we just approved it. It will save the date and time when that happened. Okay, let's take another look from the project manager's perspective. So let's go here. All right, let's go back as project manager. Let's go to my projects and let's open that project. Well, now the project has adopted the planning state. So the workflow is happening, the authorization is happening. Okay, before showing you the next step, let me go back for a second to our presentation. In addition to what you just saw, okay, ITM Platform will also provide you with a history of changes. All project state changes are preserved, so you can always see what happened in the past. Okay, and one important thing, they cannot be deleted or altered. Okay, whenever a project is created inside ITM Platform, this history is going to be kept. This is system enforced, right? So this might be useful for PMOs and the organization to make sure that projects are being conducted in the approved, following the approved rules or following the approved policies and requirements. Okay, let me show you that history of changes. So let's go back to the project. How can I see that history? Simply go to the project status details with the button. And instead of working from the status tab, you can go to the history. And from here, you will see all changes, right? From the beginning, from status draft to status planning, the requester was this user, it was issued this date at this time, this is the decision, this is the authorizer, the authorization date, and the comment. As you can see, it will preserve everything that happened to move from one step to the other. So this is how in ITM Platform we can support the entire project lifecycle beginning to end, right? You can start from whatever step makes sense for your case, from the initiation, from ideation, from proposals even, okay? And go all the way down to not just project closure, you can even keep post-mortem, the project's post-mortem, so you can identify benefits and financial benefits and a lot of extra KPIs from your projects once they have reached the close state. Okay. All right. So that is the content of our training for today. I would like to finalize today's session as usual by remembering how to ask for help if something goes wrong inside ITM Platform. Remember, please write an email to us to support@itmplatform.com. And within this email, it would be great if you can provide us with the following. Please include the URL of your instance. If you don't know how to get it, simply go to your environment, okay, in any page, and from there, just identify what goes after the itmplatform.com. If you can copy this entire URL, that would be perfect because that tells us what is the instance that you are using, okay? What is the applicable area? For example, I'm having issues with the project workflows or defining the project statuses. It would be also perfect if you can provide us with a screenshot of the error or the message itself. Where are you seeing this issue? Okay. Another technical aspect that might be really important is that you can tell us what browser and version you are using. It's not the same to be using Chrome than using Microsoft Edge, Safari, Firefox, whatever browser you have. And if you can include also the version, that is really helpful, especially with very technical issues. Also, please include a description of the sequence. You saw the error when you did what? When you clicked here, or when you enter a value, when you provided this text, or you click here and there, and then you saw the issue, right? So we would need to reproduce it to help you, to better help you. And last, please let us know if you can wait for our regular process, or if of this issue is completely preventing you from using ITM Platform. That is going to be extremely helpful so we can prioritize tickets. All right. Okay. So that's what I had for today. Let me check your questions. While I read your questions, please help us reach 5 stars in Capterra. If you can go to that link that I'm displaying here, it would be really helpful if you can provide us with some comments, some thoughts on our products and services so we can improve them. All right, looks like we don't have questions for today. Then I just want to thank you for the time that you have dedicated to this training session, and I hope to see you in our next training for ITM Platform. Thank you very much and have a great day.